Boston College heads down to Georgia again, and again they land another commitment, this time from a powerhouse program and one of the best in the country.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Happy 4th of July, belated 4th of July for all of you. I'm recording this on 4th of July with big news as the Eagles land another commitment. They're 21st in the class of 2025. I'll explain who that is and why it's a big deal. We're going to look at Tim Lewis, the defensive coordinator. A lot of folks, myself included, were very confused with this hire. He's already paying dividends, especially on the recruiting trail. I'll explain why in our second segment. And there was an interesting article on 247 about the roles of basketball players going into next season, especially with all these new transfers. I'm going to explain who they talk about and what their roles could be for the Eagles heading into this upcoming year. Now, kicking this off, let's look at the newest commitment, Josiah Victor, a 2025 offensive tackle out of Grayson, Georgia. Now, Grayson, Georgia is one of the best high school programs in the country. They produce top-notch talent every single year. I mean, you look at some of the best players in the country. If you remember back in the early 2000s, there was Robert Nemdici. I believe he was the number one recruit in the country. He was from Grayson. Wayne Gallman, who I believe played for Clemson, went to Grayson. They've produced quite a bit of collegiate talent. And so to get a guy like Josiah Victor, a 6'2", 297-pound defensive tackle, is a great get. Now, look at his offer list. And you see why I think this is a good one. He, I believe, didn't play a full season last year, so that might have kind of impacted his recruiting, but he's got offers from Colorado, Duke, Arizona State, and the big one, Georgia, the University of Georgia. Now, he camped with the Bulldogs on June 6th, earned his offer out of camp. Now, that might mean that he couldn't commit on that offer. It might not have been a committable offer, but Georgia was interested in him, and he ended up at BC. Now, the bigger question will be, can they keep him? Not to get negative about this, but that's part of the game with recruiting, right? When you get a guy like this, you get him in July. If he blows up, which he very well could, he's a very good player. There's going to be other teams looking at him, so it's going to be the work of Bill O'Brien and his staff to make sure he doesn't leave, because that's going to be a tough challenge. Getting a guy from Grayson who already has, the defending national champions from last year looking at him, there's other teams that are going to want him if he plays to the level I think he could. Now, a little bit more about Victor. He has not visited Boston College. Folks have been asking, you have 21 commitments already on the staff for the class of 2025. And all but Victor, I believe, have taken official visits. If I got my numbers correctly. Now, the reason why was Victor was offered very late. This was after, a few of the defensive tackles that they were looking at either didn't commit there, like Seichin John, who played for Hebron Christian Academy, and funny enough, was teammates with Josiah Victor 2 years ago before Victor transferred to Grayson. He went to UVA. You saw Kadir Dembale go to Wake Forest. So I think the staff might have got the sense that they might have needed to look at some other options for that second defensive tackle spot, and that's where Victor came in. They offered him after the official visits were basically set up and done. So he couldn't get on campus. Now, that doesn't mean he isn't going to take an official visit. I bet you he will. Now, I've talked to a few people. I believe the last week in July is a quiet period where if they want to take another round of official visits, I believe they can do it in the last week of July. I don't believe Jeff Hafley did that last year. But with this, it'd be a perfect opportunity to get Victor on campus. Or what they've done in the past a lot of times too is have them come on campus during the fall. So that could happen as well. Now, this is the second defensive tackle BC has landed. They also have Micah Amity from Zavarian Brothers in Massachusetts. I love this pairing of defensive tackles. You've got two guys that are already 6'2". They're bigger, almost 300 pounds, and they've got. I've talked to both kids. I've talked to Victor and Amity, and you guys are gonna BC fans are gonna love both of these guys. They're amazing. So Victor, for instance, I've been trying. I've been It's 4th of July weekend, so I've been battling back and forth to get a quote from him for my commitment article, and he finally got back to me tonight and said to me, I asked him. I said, "Hey, so why'd you pick BC?" He goes, "Why not BC? Hashtag earn it." And he's just got a really funny personality. While Micah Amity, um, he's all about BC. So these guys, you've got two guys I feel like that are really into Boston College. So that's a good thing. Now, when you're looking at needs for the rest of this program, it's still kind of the bigger holes are still there, right? You have defensive tackle is now basically done. You got your two defensive tackles. That's good. And again, you got two solid commitments. You need at least one more edge and at least two more offensive linemen, I would say, to make four. And then your class should be done. They're not going to take another quarterback. They're not going to take they could be a wide receiver or a running back, whether it's Christian Neptune or Denman. There's a few other names that are out there, but my thoughts are they're going to probably focus mostly on those offensive and defensive lines. And then if there's anyone whose tape blows up, though BC will then look at those guys, maybe with those last few spots. But remember, this is a reminder, if you're new to this whole listening to me talk about recruiting, if you know the old recruiting systems, it's different now. The classes don't cap off at 25 anymore. If BC can keep under the 85 scholarship limit, they can go and grab 30 kids this year, 27, 28. It doesn't matter. So they might have some flexibility. And I am not going to even start to manage who's going to be going and staying. It's not even worth my time. But what I'm saying is the staff clearly feels that they can take in a bigger class. So that's where it is. And so this was a great commitment. And it was kind of one that was a little bit under the radar. If you were on 247 and checking out my work over there, which I hope you guys are, you would know about him. But because he wasn't on an official visit, there wasn't a ton on him. This has been a bit of a quiet one. Now, there's a bunch of guys that I'm really excited to see some of their fall tape. Victor's going to be a big one. I can't wait. Another one I would love to see is Mekhi Dodd, the running back that they had. He missed all last year with an injury. He plays for Catholic Memorial. I can't wait to see what he does. And of course, Shaker Raising, the quarterback. You always want to see what he can do. But now you have a huge class. There's going to be a lot of discussion about how these guys are going to kind of roll in and early enrollments and all that kind of stuff. We'll get into more of that as it gets closer. But another get for BC. Now, in a moment, I want to talk about Tim Lewis because he's been a major factor in a lot of this recruiting, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance with superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. And before we get into this second segment, if you love recruiting news, get over to my website, Eagle Insider, and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button here on Locked On BC. And if you like Locked On BC, I need to tell you as well as about the 24/7 stream that we have here on Locked On. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming program for you, the daily sports listener, with all the biggest stories, without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings your can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube and on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, if you've heard my show here on Locked On BC over the last couple of weeks, a theme has popped up. And that theme is Boston College has landed 21 commitments. 5 of them are from the state of Georgia. Now, I've said before, I am a big fan of recruiting in the state of Georgia because that is a talent-rich state where football reigns supreme, and you're getting kids that play against other solid kids. And again, when you get a guy that plays at Grayson, you're getting a good school that plays high-level Georgia football. That's a big deal. So what is it that has changed that has got the Eagles so much traction in that state? Now, to be fair, a lot of the guys that they're going after are not highly recruited recruits. Like, let's call a spade, right? Marcellus Townsend, not a ton of offers. Ray Sykes, only a few offers. Zachary Thompson, only a few offers. Even if you want to be real about it, Josiah Victor, he had probably about 5 or 6, but he wasn't hugely recruited. But that being the case, they have 5 commitments. And why do they get so successful? And that has to do with Tim Lewis. So Tim Lewis is the defensive coordinator, and he has, before he was at BC, he was down in Georgia. That's where his son Bryce Lewis was playing at Blessed Trinity Catholic. So Tim, from everything I've heard, and I've talked to a few people about this, he knows the schools down in Georgia. He knows the recruits he's watching and the players he's watching and who he thinks would be a good fit. And he's got connections with the staff and the coaches down there. And that's led to him landing these recruits. And so that, I think, is a big deal. And I think also it's important to realize I know everyone gets so caught up on the offer list. Oh, does he have a Power 5 offer? And I get that. And it is a valuable tool to evaluate. But I also think the fact that Tim Lewis has probably watched a lot of these guys play down there, the guys that have committed, speaks volumes about what kind of players he's bringing in. If he's been there, if he's seen these guys, I mean, like Marcellus Townsend, for instance, he plays with Tim Lewis's son. He's with Bryce. So he knows what he's getting there. Whether Marcellus Townsend has 30 offers or none, Lewis has watched him play and has seen more live footage and tape, I'm sure, that gives him a more accurate read than some guy, some coach over at Rutgers or Pitt who just watches some tape for 5-10 minutes or whatever. It's valuable. And I think he has been critical for this successful run in the state of Georgia. And not just that he's been successful there, but if you trust that he knows, and he's an NFL level coach, I got the picture up on YouTube right now. He was with Tom Coughlin. If you trust that he knows what it takes to get to that next level, then you probably should trust that the guys that he's bringing, whether it's Ray Sykes, whether it's Zachary Thomas, whether it's Josiah Victor, that he's done his homework on them. So, as you know, and maybe you don't, maybe you're new to the recruiting scene, there's usually 2 recruiters that kind of team up on most recruits, right? For BC, for instance, right? Tim Lewis may be the connection into a lot of the schools in Georgia. And then Jeff Commission, the defensive line coach, would be the one that would kind of lead the recruit, talking to, being the connection with the recruit. So for Victor, if you talk to him, he probably talked more to Jeff Commission, but Tim Lewis is there too. Tim Lewis is behind the scenes in a lot of these Georgia commitments. And before we go to our final segment, I wanted to leave you with one quick statistic that I put up on Twitter. Excuse me. Jeff Halfley was head coach at BC for 4 years. He, during his time, and I did not account to 2020 because he was not the head coach, 2019, excuse me. He landed 4 commitments from the state of Georgia. Bill O'Brien already has 5. So it's been a much more fruitful state. It reminds me of the time Al Washington was here. Al Washington used to kill the Peach State. I think he brought in like Miles Willis and was it Max Richardson? I think was from Georgia. So he was always a big guy down that area. So it's good to see BC getting back into the state of Georgia, especially like when things aren't really great with the recruiting in the state. That they're getting their feet into a state that works pretty well. And now in our final segment, I want to get into basketball. And I want to go over an article that was up on 247 that discusses the roles of transfer players and the realistic expectations for each one. I'm going to kind of give you their lowdown and if I agree with them on each. This is Locked On Boston College. And if you have not already checked out another episode, I want to check out Locked On Red Sox. With the Red Sox playing really well, and if you're like me, I'm a little bit behind on my Red Sox news. Locked On Red Sox, they've got it covered. Make sure to check out Locked On Red Sox wherever you get your podcast. Now, 247's Isaac Trotter did a really good article the other day. It's free now. It was up on VIP just the other day. But he went through each transfer every ACC team landed and talked about realistic expectations for those players going into this upcoming season. And so BC, they lost almost their entire roster, had to revamp themselves. And I thought it was a really good preview of what BC could be doing with their transfer class. First name they bring up, Chad Venning, center from St. Bonaventure, expected role starting center. Now, he talks about how he's a real shot blocker and he's a good post-up scorer. I love this. It says that his expected role is a starting center and that Venning to Boston College could end up being real value given how nuts the market was for transfer big men. I agree with that. I think Venning will probably be a starter. I've heard buzz about Jaden Hastings, but Venning's been around quite a bit. I think most likely you'd ease Hastings in if you're going to play him, and not throw him into the fire right away. Otherwise, you've seen a lot of those younger big men. A lot of times when they haven't played at all, they get into foul trouble real fast. So I agree with him there. Now, Roger McFarland from Southeast Louisiana, wing rotation, likely a starter. I agree with that too. He says, love the activity on the glass, one of the best rebounding guards in the country, and the stuff trends to translate up. Career 37% 3-point shooter. He'll be a useful rotation player at a minimum. I think he starts. Yeah, I think your starters are probably going to be Chaz Kelly, DJ Hand, McFarland, and Chad Venning, and I'm missing one, third starter, and he's going to come up in just a moment. That's Deion Brown. I was going blank, and that's because I was about to talk about him. So Deion Brown, it says starting guard. String bean, lean guard who can absolutely fill it up. Just wired to get buckets, shot over 60. He's going to be a starter. He absolutely is going to be a starter. And then Chad Beadle, backcourt rotation. Drive first guard who wants to get to the rim as much as possible and limited playing time. At Clemson, he shot over 64% at the rim, and over half of his attempts were in the paint. Yep. I don't see Beadle being a starter. I think he's going to be a rotational guy, a guy you bring off the bench, because you have your starters. And I don't know. I feel pretty like hearing who these guys are. Yeah, they're not the most flashiest players that you brought in, but I feel like BC's they went out there into that transfer portal and brought in a class that I don't know, maybe could surprise some people this year. What do you think? Leave it in the comment section below. Now, we'll be back again tomorrow for yet another episode of Locked On BC and get a little bit of fun news for you. Starting July 15th, we're going back early again this year. We're going back to 5 days a week starting July 15th. So one more week, or 3, and we're going to be back going it live. And I hope you guys all had a great 4th of July. I was up at a lake house enjoying family. I went swimming with my kids and, did pizza and cookouts and all sorts of good stuff. And it's going to be a great day today. The 5th of July is my birthday. If you want to wish me a happy birthday, hit me up on Twitter at AJBlack247. Come over to Eagle Insider. Best birthday present, become a VIP member. Right now, it's $1 for the first month. If you just want to take it for a test drive, I hope you do. And again, thank you all for following along. For all you daily listeners, you guys are the best. And I'll see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College. Your team every day.